Hi, this is Mike Mongo, and you're listening to Just Barte.
I'm a fool for your love.
Hey guys, welcome back to Just Bate. My name is Aswin, and like always, I have Praatibh alongside with me. Now, before I introduce the guest, Praatibh, I remember when we were kids, you and Deepak, shout out to Deepak by the way, he's studying in the US, so shout out to him. But when we were young, you and Deepak would talk about going to space, becoming astronauts, and a lot of things related to space which I didn't really understand back then. But what about it to you interested you and sparked that curiosity to find out about space, to have an idea of becoming an astronaut and everything else?
So firstly, I think space and like being an astronaut or stuff like that is something that a lot of kids growing up state as their ambition or whatever it is. For me, it was not a particular thing that led me into falling in love with space or having an interest towards that stuff. For me, it was a lot of things. Like early on, my mom used to give me books or read me books that had a little bit about planets or the universe. And despite the fact that we have so much information about all of this, there's still so much that we don't know. And I think that curiosity was what made me want to learn more and eventually made me fall in love with space and all of that. So yeah, I think that's the reason why I have always loved space. And also, not to mention all the YouTube videos and conspiracy theories around aliens, which we used to watch a lot. So yeah.
Talking about space and astronaut, now if you haven't taken the hint already, we have a very, very special guest. Now, he lives by the principle of work, live and play, and he's done exactly that his entire career. He's done things in the field of science and arts, which he absolutely loves. But at the age of 42, he decided that he wants to revisit his childhood dream, and that was becoming an astronaut and going to space. So he became the first astronaut teacher, and he also wrote a book called The Astronaut Instruction Manual, and eventually became an astronaut. Now, this teaches us to never let go of your childhood dreams. But yes, Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, I'm Mike Mongo. Yeah, how's everyone today? You guys, Praatibh, Aswin, good to see you both.
Mike, anyways, something that we've always done with all of our episodes is have a small icebreaker of sorts to sort of break the ice and get into the questions. So I think this is an icebreaker that you've probably seen coming, and it's going to be related to your glasses, your spectacles. Now, I read somewhere that although they're upside down, they were made this way. But is there any reason why you got them made this way? Is there any story behind this?
There is, and I'll tell you, but both of you have to flip your glasses.
Awesome. I don't mind.
Okay.
I have to see it. Like I can't believe that you took so long. Let's get into this game.
Oh
yeah. Aswin, you got it. Praatibh, you got it too. You look great. Yeah. So here's the funny thing. Now my prescriptions are made this way, so your prescriptions are now reversed, and they don't work the same. So I let you off the hook. You're allowed to go back, and the reason I have these glasses like this is that when I was years ago, I was being interviewed, and I as a grown up, our eyes change, and we have these things called cheaters. I have a bunch of them right here, and so you just put them on, and you can read whatever is nearby. Right. And all the grown-ups know what I'm talking about, and like full grown-ups, right? And so I got a new pair. I was being interviewed, and this is when we were using Skype. No one really uses that anymore, but I had, before the interview, I'd flip my glasses because they were pinching my ears, and I just did that so I could use them, and it flipped the whole thing, and then I forgot about it. And so there's an interview sort of like this, and they had these two guys, and again, the Skype has a whole, we're so good at Zoom and Google and Hangouts and all the different things, meetings, but back then we're not so great at it. And so I had this little tiny screen. I wasn't really paying attention, and I forgot that my glasses were upside down. And the two people that were interviewing me, they're German, if I recall correctly, and they were looking at me really strange the entire conversation, but they never said anything. And I just thought it was cultural. I just thought it was like one of these like U.S. like one of these things. And then I got off the interview, and I finished it and got up and was walking around the office, and I have a mirror in my office, and then I saw that my glasses were this way, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then right then, I was married at the time, and my wife walks in, and I go, you're not gonna believe it. And she was used to me at that. I don't know if that's the right word. She suffered me, and so she walked in after work, and I was there with my glasses upside down, and I said, oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe this. I just did an interview with my glasses like this the entire time. And then her face was just over it. Her face, she wasn't mad at me. She was like, oh gosh, he's doing that thing. He's like, she did this. She goes, and I was like, oh, is that funny? Oh my God, is that funny? Because I knew if she was like, I could always trigger her. And if she got to this exasperated place, I knew it was hysterical. It was just our relationship. And so the next day I went to my optometrist, who's been making glasses for me since I was a kid, and said, I want to have glasses made this way. And the reason why is because I engage with students as an astronaut teacher, but also grown-ups, peer grown-ups who are working to understand how to communicate important ideas to students. And the funny thing about grown-ups is, as we become, you'll see, you'll know this experience. You'll know this experience to a degree. I know you're both in your 20s, but early 20s, but it changes. And the older we get, the more we as grown-ups forget what it was when we were you, or when we were a younger student, and then we become that grown-up that we just could not stand when we were kids. And it doesn't even make any sense to me. So I get to remind grown-ups, first of all, that we were them, and we went through this parallel experience, and don't forget that when we're engaging with you. And when I'm working with grown-ups, because of we're all on devices now,
right?
I could walk into a room, and if my glasses were like this, I'd walk in, and grown-ups would be like my peers. They would look up like Mike Mongo and then go back to their phone. But when I walk in like this, hi, my name is Mike Mongo. I'm an astronaut teacher. They do a double take, and I have everybody's attention. Now, it's easy to get people's attention, Aswin and Praatibh. It's easy. What's important is to have something to say that's worth hearing afterwards. And what I have to share, particularly with young students today, is that tomorrow's jobs are in space. And we can solve all the challenges we face on Earth, including energy, health, sustainability, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, what Dr. Simon Proctor calls JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, JEDI space, and even the illusion of scarcity by solving for space. We can solve all the challenges we face on Earth by solving for space. That's really important to get across.
Before we get into space, I really want to talk about how you fell in love with the idea of space and becoming an astronaut. You were 4 years old when human being touched space on the moon in 1969. Now, what kind of impact did that make in your head when you were 4 years old? Do you remember that? Do you remember the news floating around?
Like that was the moment. Yeah, like of course. Like now, the funny thing is, we underestimate 4-year-olds. We underestimate that was a real clear memory when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. Neil Armstrong has been my sort of mentor since I was 4, because when I was 3, I'm going to constantly reference grown-ups because I love us grown-ups. And so when I was 3, the grown-ups in my life asked me, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do when you grow up? That question, of course, you would ask a 3-year-old what they're going to do when they're going to grow up, and because the wisdom of a 3-year-old. And so I said I was going to be a superhero because I saw Batman on TV, and that's like, I'm going to be a superhero. And they're like, that's not a real thing. I was like, whoa, that's a harsh thing to say. Like, holy smokes, that's heavy. And so I thought about it for a long time, actually. And then while I was thinking about it, I turned 4, and then we landed human beings on the moon. And I asked, is astronaut a real thing? And they're like, yes. astronaut is a real thing. And I was like, okay, cool. That's what I'm going to be. That's what I'm going to be then. And I just had it in my head all the way through. I've always pursued the things I have a passion for. My mom encouraged me to pursue art, and she always let me read science fiction and comic books. She always made sure that I had access to reading material and encouraged me to read, and read to me and read to us. And that made all the difference in the world. I was a big fan of Star Trek, the original series, and cartoons, and just these are the things that informed me as a person. I went on to do 15 years at university, and just I loved it. I loved the experience of learning. And then when I was done, I just kept on pursuing my passions and the things I love, and I've never stopped. And when I was 42, I wrote the Astronaut Instruction Manual, and I was working as a marine science researcher in the Florida Keys, and I was thinking about what to do next, because we do a lot of different things in our lives. We do a lot of different careers. We don't just do one. Yeah, you'll see. And so I was going up the list of everything I had wanted to do, and realized I had accomplished everything except for one thing, and that was astronaut. And in 2007, if you're 42, well, there's no SpaceX, there's no Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic is a thought, and there's no private space industry. So it did not look like astronaut was in my future. And I was having an extraordinary experience working on the boats, training crew and captain to be science communicators. Every so often there would be students on board, young students, and we would be talking about something lovely about the world, something wonderful, because the world is a marvelous place, and there's so many processes that are just fantastic. So I was having a fantastic experience in that relationship, and then I took that, connected it to the idea of astronaut, because I wasn't going to get to be an astronaut, and came up with astronaut teacher. I actually was 100% certain that I was not going to get to be an astronaut. However, if I encourage students like yourselves to go to become astronauts, you would be so enamored with me for having given you permission to imagine yourself living, working, and playing in space, that when I was older, you would call me and say, Mr. Mongo, you may not remember me, but we had a conversation, and I became an astronaut, and now I'm a captain, and I was wondering if you'd like to go to space. And I'd be like, yeah. Absolutely. I'm 72. I want to go to space. Yes. And that was my plan. That was the master plan. And then, but 15 years later, from that point, what has happened is that we do have private space industry now. Yeah. And just recently, I got selected to be commercial crew for Uplift Aerospace. Yes, and so I'm.
Congratulations, by the way. Congratulations.
I receive. Thank you. What a joy! It changed my life immediately, Aswin. It changed it like.
Do you remember what it felt like when you got the news? And
yes, I didn't believe it.
Oh.
100% didn't believe it. No, I didn't change my mood at all. I was with Kunal Sood, actually, from India.
Right.
He works with the UN. He's a good friend of mine, and we were in New York. We were in the city, and we were at the Marriott, and then he was there with me, and he's like, "What?" I'm like, space, and he goes, you're going to space, and I'm like, I don't like. He's like, you're going to space, and I'm like, when Kunal says you're going to space, I mean, like, he's a really he's a kind person, and he's really clear on his communication, and so then after that, the next day, the Josh Haynes from Uplift Aerospace and Emily Higgins flew into town. When I saw Josh, when he looked at me in my eyes, and when I heard the words coming from his own lips, that's when it hit me. I'm like,
you were that 4-year-old again.
He lives right in here. He lives right here, right here. He's here right now. Yes.
That's amazing, man.
The smile and the passion on your face is so beautiful to watch.
So evident also,
So beautiful.
Wow, that really went a lot of directions. And yeah, that was really nice, really wholesome. Now,
I mean,
I mean, your love for space is really evident. And initially, the question that we were going to ask you was about computers, how you had the option of choosing either computers or learning typing, and you went with computers.
whoa.
And you were I think you were four of 200 students who made that decision. So,
Wow, you two do research. Gosh,
it's all Ashwin.
I
It's
mean,
all Ashwin.
we
that's
have
a true story.
Also, on those lines, I mean, you've seen the change in technology. So, that's one part of the question we'd like to know from your perspective. And also the fact that, I mean, you wanted to be an astronaut. Do you think somewhere that impacted your decision?
Yes, absolutely. No question. I carried that with me, particularly then. So, like at the
Yeah.
time, well, we have these opportunities, these crossroads that are put in front of us, and they can be destructive or they can be constructive. And we get to make the right. We get to make the right decisions. Like it could be anything. It can be really simple. And sometimes we make the wrong decisions when we're younger so that we make the right decisions when we're older.
right.
Sometimes we make the wrong decisions when it's not so expensive to our future so that we have that lesson to draw upon. And there's a couple moments where I made great decisions and a couple moments when I made bad decisions. And those versions of myself are my allies. They live with me forever. I celebrate them, and I go back and I stand with them in their moments. And I was in the Army, and there was during boot camp there was one of our battle buddies had smuggled candy into the barracks, and I was in my 30s, and so then I was in my 30s, and they started to smoke us, it's basically like torture essentially. Like it's just like to get conditioning and get people used to grueling behavior and exercises, and so it's called being smoked, and then they just kept on doing that. We were 45 minutes into being smoked to figure out who had the candy. I knew who had the candy. Everybody knew who had the candy. And then 45 minutes into it, one of the drill sergeants said, "Privates, we just want to know who did it, and then we're done. Like that's it. Like whose candy was it? I want you to know that it was me who said it was so and so."
Oh.
And the drill sergeant at the time said, "That's okay, privates. We just wanted to know who the snitch was."
Right.
That is an important lesson. I just told it to my 11-year-old son recently. I just told it to him, and the reason was because, first of all, I was in my 30s and I should have known better. But like again, I learned it in a space. I learned it for a reason that caused no real harm. In real life, that could have caused me.
Right.
That could have caused me my reputation, in the very least.
Right.
That could have caused me, in some circles, my hand or my tongue, and with some people, it could have cost me my life.
Right.
That's an important lesson. It isn't about being honest or dishonest. It's about being intelligent.
Right.
And what's the value here? What's the principle at stake? And that version of myself, no matter how bad he feels for that idiot move he made, I'm right there with him. I celebrate him. He saved my life. He took one
That's
for the
how
team.
it should be. Yeah.
The team who we, each of us is our own team. There's our future self, there's our past self, there's who we are right now. And that version of myself took that lesson at that moment. And so I celebrate him. I'm there with him. I'm like, I got you, man. And I appreciate this lesson that you're learning the hard way, because this could be a really deadly lesson. So that's a crossroads. Another one that has a different tone altogether was when I was 14. I was in high school, and they posed to us, 200 of us as high school students. I think I was a freshman. they decide all our classes except for one. We had one choice for electives. And again, this is 79. This is like 1980
Right.
something.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
This is way back when computers are brand new.
Right.
And they said you can take typing.
Mm-hmm.
We offered typing as a course that you take for an entire semester.
Right.
Like it's unbelievable looking back. Like we had typewriters, like
Yeah.
big machines.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so then which the guidance counselor explained is almost certainly going to get you a job out of high school, and maybe the most important class that you take in high school, and is a skill that you will need for the rest of your life. Or you can take computers. Choose. And that's how they pose it to us as 14-year-olds.
Right.
14-year-olds don't know anything. The only reason I chose computers,
Mhm.
I hope I love science fiction. All of us understand that, but I hope it was because I was at least, I hope it was like fight the power. I hope there was some like obstinate rebel in me that said, I don't care what they say, I'm going to take computers because that's what I want to do. And 4 of us chose computers. One of them is Warren Bear, the billionaire. He was in my class.
Wow.
We learned Fortran 77 together. And yes, and that led a path for me. Opportunities will show up. Challenges will show up in our life. That's a long way to get to this point. And we get to be courageous. We get to be bold. We get to take a chance. We get to look and check in with our future self and see what they want from us.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way to put it. And there was one important person in your life, and that was a teacher who said that there's no boring and there's only boring people, and you took offense to that. And that's also when you started focusing on arts. So my question to you is, you focusing on arts and you loving science and computers, how did that help?
Her name was Franny Lloyd, by the way. Franny Lloyd at the
Right.
at the Pinellas Park High. Yes,
So you,
good research, fellas.
thank you. So you focusing on arts and loving computers and science, how did that help you in your career, but also in terms of space and being an astronaut and the idea of you becoming an astronaut?
This is one of the best interviews I've ever had. You've done the research, and I get to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much. That means
Great
a lot.
work.
Thank you so much.
And art has played a massive role in who I am and my vision for space and what I communicate to others. Because there is no culture without art, without who we are as human beings.
Right.
Even think about the cave drawings. Think about somebody feeling necessary to draw those cave drawings.
Yeah.
Maybe they understood that somebody in the future would see them. There's no way probably that they imagined that all of these thousands of years later that these pictures of people and of the culture in the moment, or is there, that they imagined that these drawings of the animals at the time would be understood in some way.
Right.
And that's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, the older we get, like, I want you to know, it becomes more and more like, whoa. I've walked around in these places, like in India, there's tons of places that are so historic.
Oh,
that have,
yes. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
it's a blessing. And then generation after generations have walked the same stones or touched the same place. And there's a connection with who we were, who we are, and it leads to who we become. This is exciting stuff. Yeah, so art does that. Art has that power. The statues, the paintings, the writing, the poetry.
There's so much story behind that one thing that you see.
Exactly. Yeah. Art is truly powerful. Yeah.
This actually is a beautiful segue to our next question, because you keep talking about teaching young kids and what they think and bringing out what they have. You were also the president of the Gay and Lesbian Community Center of Key West, and you continuously talk about kids and inspiring them. So my question to you is, what the idea of inspiring the younger generation or the next generation, did that come about as you grew older, or did that come about because you were a 4-year-old looking up to Neil Armstrong and you were hoping that you would do that to someone else?
Oh, okay. when I was growing up, so I'm a bisexual person,
Right.
and so then, and when I was a kid, there was no such thing as that.
Mhm.
There was
Right.
straight people, and then there was perverts, and that was it. There was no gay. There was straight people, and there was perverts, and so I knew as a kid that there would be no way. All the jobs, I could be a rock star, I could be anything, but I can't be a teacher. As a kid,
Oh.
I was aware of that because I was a pervert, because I was bisexual. That was like boom.
Mhm.
That's what it means to be 57, that I have that experience. And then the most amazing thing happened. The future happened. And it's funny because as I was growing up, people would tell me, "Oh my gosh, you're going to be a Patricia Canley." She was a mentor of mine, and she would, and when I was your age, she would say, "You're a teacher." And I'm like, "I'm not a teacher. I'm a rock star. I'm going to be a rock star. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be famous. I'm not going to be a teacher." But she just saw me interact with peers and students and how I engage, and then she was right, of course, right? And so, but also only because the future happened and everybody got to be okay. We got to be okay with ourselves.
Right.
Like we got to let go of these things that actually don't matter, and hold into a higher esteem things that matter. Are we kind? Are we compassionate? Are we supportive of others? Are we truth tellers? Are we helpers? Those are the things that determine character. You guys got me on a jam right now. There's a story about it's like a allegory, and it is there's a person walking on a beach, and it's a moonlit night. You've heard the story probably, and for some reason on the beach are tens of thousands of starfish. It's just one of these long stretches of beaches. I've been around the world. I've been to these places. It's amazing. The universe is the earth is a phenomenal place. And you can find yourself in a place where something remarkable is happening. And the tide is going back out and it's leaving all these starfish up. And this person's walking along the beach and sees the starfish stranded on the beach. And then off in the distance, far off in the distance, they see another person, which again, this is par for the course. I've been in these experiences, and out of nowhere, someone else shows up just in the place like that. You would think nobody else would be. And then they see that they're doing something. They can't really make it out, but as they move closer, they see that they're kneeling down, picking up starfish and throwing them back into the ocean. And they get closer to one another, closer and closer. And eventually they get right up on each other. Now, a funny thing about us as human beings is we can be doing the most obvious thing in the entire world. We're eating a bowl of food, and someone will come in and it's like, "What are you doing?" When it's clear that we're eating a bowl of food, like there's no question. What are you doing? We're watching TV, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm clearly watching TV. And so like this person walks up to the other and it's like, "What are you doing?" Like,
"What are you
throwing
doing?"
Starfish back in the ocean. And they're like, "Why? Like there's so many. Like it doesn't make a difference." And the person bends over, picks up a starfish, throws it in the ocean, and said, "Made a difference to that one."
That's exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And
Wow.
that's the game. That's the game, fellas. That's the game. We never know when who we're talking with is the most important person in the world. All it takes is one great idea, one good idea that we communicate to one another, and then suddenly everything changes for all of us.
Two things.
That's true.
One, I think I'll always remember this conversation, and I'll always remember you, because a lot of what you said is something I'll hold on to as motivation, because there are times when we don't get as many views or whatever, and what motivates us is what, like you said, that one person might listen to it and it might make a change for them. And having you, listening to you say that, I think is something I'll really, really hold on to. And the second thing is, I think I could listen to you forever and talk about a lot of things. But coming back to now, a long time ago, when you said you got the call saying you're going to space. Now, before Praatibh, you asked about your next question, but you got the call about going to space. Did it ever, I mean, I'm sure you became the 4-year-old self that you were and said, yes, this is my time now. But you also mentioned that you're but it is.
I have friends. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, but like you said, you're also 57, and a lot of things come into play when you're 57. Like you said, you're not on autopilot anymore. Did that ever occur in your head that it might be too late? Like, I've got this chance, but it might not at all.
Yes.
Oh, it did?
Of course.
Oh, right.
Yeah. When I was 42, 15 years ago, I didn't think my goal was to have guys like you or people like you become astronauts by having these
Right,
conversations,
right.
and then you would call me
Mhm.
and invite me to go to space, and I would be old.
Right.
That was the whole plan.
Oh,
And
right.
fortunately, we as a society have gotten better. And this is it looks like we're in a race between disaster and prosperity, and scarcity and abundance, and it can be that
That's a
way.
really
If that-
interesting take. Yeah.
if that's the game people want to play, great. I have
Mhm.
a vision of abundance for all of us. That's the vision I have, and
Right.
I know the way forward.
Mhm.
I looked at this problem in so many different ways before I decided on space. I realized that space is the only way I can figure out. The only other way I can figure out that could possibly provide a resource that would allow us to succeed is meditation.
Right.
Is to stop.
Mhm.
Is just stop. Sometimes we get into ruts and we're just in motion and we just stay in motion. The object of motion stays in motion.
Yep.
We keep on doing the wrong thing, and that the only way to move forward is to stop. And sometimes it even means backtracking, backing out. Like if you go forward into a place that is not illuminating, sometimes the only way is to back out.
Right.
But sometimes it's go through the
That's true.
darkness. And it's like we get to decide which one of these things that is. And I am here and just championing a model. This is the way forward. This is the way forward. And if anyone has any argument with it, great. Go do the way that you think is the way forward. Go do that. And that's my message. But I'm not here to have arguments or discussions whether I'm right or wrong. I'm all in on what I'm talking about.
But aren't you scared? I mean, realistically, aren't you scared about the training that you have to go through and then the whole journey that you have to go through? No?
Are you teasing me? Aswin, what could possibly go wrong? What would be the worst thing that could happen? The absolute worst thing that could happen. What could be the worst thing to happen?
I mean, you could.
What's worse? Go ahead,
You
say
could
it.
die.
Yeah, doing what I love.
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's a
fair
beautiful
enough, yeah.
perspective. Yes.
I mean, then there's an
can even-
argument of shouldn't you be responsible because you have a family, you have a son. Isn't it risky to do all of this at this age?
So I'm modeling for my son to do what you love at this age.
Beautiful.
Aswin, did you say I'm going to call somebody in India? They're going to come by your house. Did you just say at this age you're on my list? You're on my list.
That's because you kept saying it. You kept saying it as you grow
I am
older.
57.
Yes. I mean, it's not old. 57 years is not old.
It is old.
Fair enough, if you say so. But yeah,
Wow.
that's a really nice take. Yeah, modeling.
Yes. Mike, I think this is my final set of questions. In fact, it's just going to be a rapid fire of sorts. I'm just going to throw words at you, and I want a brief opinion of yours.
It's like a game. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Flat earthers.
Sad. Sad.
Okay, that was a good one. Colonization of Mars.
I cannot stand the word colonization. We have not
Okay,
had any
interesting.
so I can say migration.
Mhm.
So
Right,
if you want to try it again, I will.
Try it again, Praatibh.
If you're more interested if you're more interested in migrating to Mars than you are about the idea of my feelings with the word colonization, then go ahead.
Then try again, Praatibh, try again.
All right. Humans moving to Mars.
This is a ridiculous idea, and here's why. Because so Mars is deadly to human beings, and I can explain. I love talking about this. And
Go for it.
okay, so first of all, do you know how long it takes to get to Mars?
Ha.
8 months.
No idea.
Oh,
Okay.
right.
8 months.
That's a long time.
Okay, so you're in right now the size spaceships we have they're about the size of a small bedroom. Okay, of a regular, maybe even a regular. But you have 2 or 3 people in that for 8 months together.
That's
That sounds like a
yeah.
death sentence. Okay, so I don't know how. But then when you get there, you're going to be there for 4 months waiting for that, or the window to open up where you could go back, because the way that, here's the sun, and then the Earth orbits
Right.
the sun,
Right.
and then Mars orbits at a different
Oh my god, oh yeah.
So
Right.
so for them you have to launch at exactly right time, and if you miss it,
It's gonna take.
you're over.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then that's part one. That's the very first thought, and that's
Mhm.
that's a deal killer right there. Second is that getting to Mars, the warmest place on Mars is essentially the coldest place on Earth.
Whoa.
The warmest place on Mars is
I didn't
essentially
know
the closest to the
that.
sun.
Mhm.
Okay, hold on. I'm not done yet. I'm just warming up. So then on top of that, so Mars doesn't have any volcanics. The volcanics of
Okay.
Mars has died out, so it doesn't have a magnetosphere. And then essentially it doesn't have the necessary internal movement to create the magnetics or the gravitational pull to hold in atmosphere. Okay?
Right.
So the sun's solar winds strip away the atmosphere constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it means there's no atmosphere. It's very shallow. It's if I recall correctly, like off the top of my head, it's 20 feet or something like that
Right.
of atmosphere. Even if it's 1,000, it doesn't matter. It's nowhere near the Earth, and the reason why
Right.
it matters is because no atmospheric pressure means that if we could breathe on Mars, we would bleed out our lungs because there's no atmospheric pressure. That's the thing.
Right.
But we can't breathe that. We can't breathe on Mars. Why? Because the atmosphere that is there is CO2, which, as you
Right.
both know, is what we
Mhm.
exhale.
Right.
Okay, so we bleed out our lungs, and if we could breathe it, it's CO2. So then, not done yet. So then, because there's no atmosphere, and the solar winds have stripped away the atmosphere, the rays of the sun hit Mars so intensely, and it's not filtered. Our atmosphere blocks 90%
Right.
of the radiation from the sun.
Yep.
Right.
That's not on Mars. And on Mars, in one day of radiation exposure on Mars is equal to a year's worth of sun on
Wow.
Earth for us as humans.
Right.
Not done yet. In the soil of Mars, Google perchlorate, Perchlorate. Perchlorate is a kind of salt that is deadly poisonous to us in minute quantities, and the soil of Mars is thought to have it's prolific, it's rife throughout the soil of Mars. So even a tiny bit would kill us. So the soil of Mars is deadly poisonous to us. Remember the scene in The Martian where he's growing potatoes
Right.
on the soil of Mars?
Yes.
Then
Yes,
then he died. Yeah, so like that's it. The whole thing is and by the way, the author of Andy Weir, who wrote that
Mhm.
before we realized that the soil of Mars has perchlorate.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So that is what I think about Mars. I know that was supposed to be fast, but
No. This is
humans going to
beautiful.
Mars
That's
is
perfectly fine.
cool.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate this answer because I don't know, for some reason this whole moving to Mars has been romanticized so much that people often don't see the facts for what they are. So yeah, I think I really love that answer. Next word I have, space tourism. If you had to put a year, or if you had to estimate a year when it would become something that's very regular.
It's pretty regular right now. So like
Mhm.
Starship is the SpaceX Starship is going to carry 100 people at a time, and
Yeah.
there's going to be a fleet of Starships. And it'll be also able to carry 100 tons of cargo and materials. So we're going to have space industry very, very soon. The Bigelow Aerospace model of space structure is shown to be functional. We have one still currently in operation on the International Space Station, made out of Kevlar. It's inflatable, and it's kept open by air pressure. And the Bigelow was going to create hotels of that, and that's probably in all likelihood the case. We're about to have new space stations. Axiom is working on developing a space station.
Wow.
Yes, it's going to be amazing very soon, very quickly.
Okay, last word from my side. NFTs / Web3. Where do you think it's heading? I know you personally also do a little bit. So yeah.
A lot. I've been working in NFT since 2017. My first
Wow,
project I co-founded was in 2018, January 4th, 2018, first project of 2018. And and I've done a lot of NFT projects. I'm deeply embedded in Web3. I think that this is it's the evolution of commerce. And as I mentioned before, I'm of the worldview that human beings have evolved, and this is why Web3 shows up now.
The last question. So this is how we end this. Although I know the answer to this. Again, we can speak to you forever, but this is how we end our podcast, because we have a tally and we hate who the winner of the tally is, and I feel like you're gonna choose that anyway. The question is, are you a tea or a coffee person? Yeah. Yeah, see, that's the problem.
All that build up.
No, it's a great question. It is a great question. And I'm just trying to think. So, like, do I call somebody to take care of both of you, or what? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how hard should we be punished for this question. So, Praatibh and Aswin, they will be taken care of. Okay, got it. So then, as a full grown up, I have to say that thank the heavens for coffee. Praise good for coffee. I want you to know I love tea. And I was drinking tea while we were like I definitely
nice,
absolutely
right.
Oh yes,
Right.
a nice green tea while we were having this conversation. And but in the morning, oh my Google, praise all for that coffee bean.
Yeah, for some reason everyone does choose coffee. Everyone. I think the only two people who choose tea are both of us.
Well, yeah, but you're 22. Like, you don't drink
Okay,
coffee. There's no
valid.
reason. I didn't start drinking coffee until I was 35.
Wow.
Well, I mean, like, what my nana would make, my mima she would make like con leches, Cuban con leches in Key West. Like, I would drink these little coffees, and they were almost all just like milk and sugar with a touch of coffee.
Right.
But it wasn't until I didn't want or need coffee until I was 35. I drank a cup of coffee when I was 35, and I was just like, I'm an X-Man. This is incredible. More.
But yes, coffee. Guys, Mike, thank you so much for joining us and giving us so much of your time. By the way, so much of it. Guys, whoever's watching, we'll put all of his links in the description below. So the book, his YouTube show, his Instagram account, please, and his website. But please go check that out, please. Like, look at him.
100%.
I'm sure, like,
Do
both
check it
of
out.
us could speak to you forever and gain a lot of things. I
It's
feel
an
like
honor.
a lot of what you said in this episode, I'm gonna hold on to it forever, at least for a long time, as long as I can remember and my memory lets me. But yeah,
Osman, Praatibh, I just want you to know, both of you, I'll hold you both accountable. Here's how I'm going to hold you accountable, because I continue into the future, and so do you. And so I get to check back in the future and see where you are, even in 5 years' time, right? I want to know where both of you are. And so you better, like, don't use this platform and what you're doing, this work, and let it go to waste. Like, look and find your future self and see how you're serving them, supporting them, and then be the titans that both of you are.
thank you so much, and
Definitely.
we will definitely make sure that we hold on to this and help people. Always help people around. Guys, thank you so much for watching.
Yo, thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Just Baatein. We hope you enjoyed it and that it left you inspired. Thanks for all your support, and maybe you could support us just a little more by maybe going to our Instagram and Twitter and giving us a follow there. And also you can listen to us on all podcasting platforms, right from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts. Cheers.